Leading a Spiritual Life by Maulana Wahiduddin Khan. Narrated by Josh Rivedal. Forward. In front of my residence, there is a tree covered in green leaves and beautiful flowers. It is a source of spiritual nourishment for me. For me, it is like a spiritual partner. When I sit under this tree, I suddenly feel that there is a silent conversation going on between the two of us. Many of the articles of the present book were compiled while I sat under this tree. The greatest lesson I have learned from this tree is, try to live on your own. Be positive in every situation. Adopt the culture of giving rather than taking, and the whole world will serve as a catchment area for you. This book encourages the reader to live like a tree in this world. According to my experience, a tree is an illustration of spiritual life. It is a model for spiritual living. The present book is a spiritual guide for every man and woman. I hope it will give the reader a vision, facilitate clearer thinking, and establish the principles of personality development. I hope it will help him diffuse his stress, decondition his conditioning, and enable him to rediscover the course he should take to lead a successful life. Life is full of unwanted experiences. There is no one who is not destined to travel through a jungle of problems. It is the destiny of every man and woman. The question is, what is the formula to deal with this? The only successful formula is, don't take things as an evil. Take them as a challenge. If you take things as evil, you will simply develop a negative attitude, and a negative attitude will only increase your problems. But if you take untoward situations as a challenge, this attitude will unfold the hidden capacity of your mind. You will be able to face all challenges bravely and intelligently, and sooner or later reach your destination. Maulana Wahiduddin Khan. New Delhi, May 3rd, 2016. Garden of Spirituality. Just visit a place of natural beauty, a place where there are mountains, flowing rivers, tall, lush green trees, birds on the wing, small white clouds floating in the sky, the sun shining, and so on. In such a spot, you will feel like exclaiming, "How wonderful nature is!" But nature is not simply a wonderful world. It is rather an amazing garden of spirituality. Indeed, everything in nature gives you a taste of spirituality. For example, when you see a honeybee hovering over a flower, you suddenly realize that it has a lesson to impart. For every part of nature is like a flower for you. In each part resides the nectar of spirituality. Take out this spiritual nectar, and you will be motivated to turn yourself into a spiritual personality. It should be borne in mind that spirituality is not a state of ecstasy. Ecstasy is a trance-like state, a state of bliss, or a semi-conscious condition. That is, it is like a kind of drowsiness which causes blurriness in the conscious mind. But spirituality is very different from this, being marked by a high level of acute intellectual development. It is a form of intellectual awakening, rather than a semi-somnolent state of mind. During the pre-scientific age, the notion had become current that the heart was the source of spirituality. This was taken for granted and led to spirituality becoming a subject for meditation. That is, heart-based spirituality. Since the heart was devoid of any thinking capacity, spirituality could not, therefore, become an advanced discipline. It was reduced, rather, to being an array of ill-defined assumptions. Now that we live in the age of science, it is possible to place spirituality within the framework of a mind-based discipline. Being a science, just like other sciences, spirituality should be associated not with meditation, but rather with contemplation. Since the domain of the physical sciences encompasses the exploration of the quantitative aspects of nature, what is discovered therein is necessarily of a material nature. The domain of spiritual science, on the other hand, encompasses the contemplation of the qualitative aspects of nature, so that, within its scope, it is things of a spiritual nature which are brought to light, just as the honeybee extracts honey from flowers. Flowers are the greatest concern of the honeybee. For a honeybee, its whole world is a world of flowers. It never wastes its time on other things. It concentrates on flowers, takes the nectar from them, and returns to its hive. The same is true of an awakened mind. For an awakened mind, the whole world is a world of spirituality. It extracts the spiritual content from everything. The awakened person thus enhances his spirituality until he grows to be a spiritual giant. Spiritual science, in developing the mind, enables one to analyze matters in an objective manner. In complex issues, it is an aid to the making of right judgments. It helps one to view things in such a way that one's mental confusion is dispelled, and one can think with total clarity. If heart-based spirituality was no more than thoughtless ecstasy, mind-based spirituality has emerged as a fine-tuned form of high thinking. Spiritual science has evolved in the same way as the science of the solar system. In the early centuries, man had given credence to the geocentric theory. As a result, no development in this science was possible. In modern times, however, man's thinking altered sufficiently for the heliocentric theory to be formulated, as a result of which solar science became a developed discipline. The same change in thinking took place in the case of spiritual science. In the pre-scientific period, people believed in heart-based spirituality, so that there could be no furtherance of the imparting of spiritual discipline. The post-scientific age being an age of mind-based spirituality, endless scope for spiritual advancement has opened up. Our world is like a garden of all good things, and spirituality enables the individual to live in and benefit from this garden. It requires a prepared mind. C. V. Raman, 1888 to 1970. The renowned Indian scientist once had it pointed out to him that scientific discoveries were accidental. Raman's response was, "Yes, but such accidents occur only when the mind is prepared." The fact is that all opportunities for scientific discovery are already present in nature. People pass by them, but fail to recognize them. A scientist, having a prepared mind, and develops any such matter as could be of scientific interest the moment he comes across it. This is how scientific discovery is arrived at. The same is true of spirituality. Tokens of spirituality are scattered all over the world. In fact, every part of nature, great or small, is invested with spiritual content. People see the signs, but pass them by without detecting them. One who has a prepared mind, however, is able to recognize them and then turn them into objects of contemplation. It is discovery plus contemplation that adds up to spirituality. This story illustrates the importance of mental preparedness. Anyone who wants to live as a spiritual person must train himself to this end. One who has neglected to prepare himself will never be able to draw spiritual nourishment from life's experiences. In the midst of spiritual abundance, he will continue to remain spiritually starved. The meaning of love of God. Love means strong affection. Love is a natural phenomenon, an elevated kind of positive response towards someone you feel is lovable. Love cannot be created in a vacuum. It requires a strong base of affection. Love of God is this same kind of strong affection. The basis of this love is quite natural when one discovers that one was created by God, and that it was God who has given mankind all such bounties as the planet Earth, the life support system, oxygen, water, and food. All these things were not created by man. They are precious gifts bestowed by someone else. When one discovers this fact, one naturally becomes a lover of God. Thus, love of God is the outcome of one's discovery. Every sincere person reaches a stage in life when he faces some basic questions such as, how did I come into existence? How is it that I find myself in a world that is extremely favorable to me? One realizes that this compatibility between man and the rest of the universe is so unique that science has observed that the universe has been custom-made for man. Love is in fact an acknowledgement of this. When we endeavor to acknowledge our super benefactor, we call it love of God. Although love is an inner feeling, it comes naturally to human beings to give it an external expression. It is said that man is a social animal, so it is but natural that one's inner love should also find some expression in terms of social relationships. It is this social expression of one's inner feeling that is called peace. In terms of God, love is a psychological acknowledgement of the Creator. And in terms of society, love is manifested in peaceful living among other members of society. Divine food. Jesus Christ once said, "Man cannot live by bread alone." Matthew 4:4. What Jesus meant was that material provision does not suffice. All bread does is sustain us physically. Further to this, one needs divine provision or spiritual food. Without receiving such food, the individual cannot develop his or her personality. The fact is that in this world, everything has two distinct sides to it, the material and the spiritual. From the material things which surround you, you must be able to extract the spiritual content, and to this end, you have to develop your mind to effectively do so. Only then will you be able to garner spiritual or divine food. If material food maintains your physical health, then the divine content of material things develops your personality along spiritual lines. While physical food gives you physical health, spiritual food maintains the health of the non-physical part of your personality. For example, let us consider water, which is a combination of two gases, hydrogen and oxygen. Although it is made of two material elements, when it enters the human body, it becomes assimilated in it, thus giving it vital assistance in maintaining its functions. When you discover this affinity between water and your body, you provide yourself with spiritual food for thought, leading to the realization and appreciation of God's wisdom, in that He created water, a combination of chemicals, in such a way that it is completely compatible with our bodies. Discoveries of this kind, made by observing the various material objects and events around you, and then extracting the spiritual content from them, will give you unlimited solace and contentment. Extracting the spiritual content from material things will give you the spiritual food to enable you to develop yourself as a spiritual person. If your earnest desire is to live your life as a spiritual person, you must learn the art of such extraction. Just a call away. I once went on a condolence visit to two young people, a sister and a brother, whose father had died, leaving them alone in their flat in New Delhi. Naturally, both of these young people were very sad. One of the visitors, who was a family friend, spoke some words of solace. He said, "Don't worry, I am just a call away." Suddenly a thought came to mind. God Almighty is also just a call away from every man and woman. The Creator created man in such a way that there is no distance between the two. Both are very near to each other. It is possible for man to contact God Almighty at any moment, from wherever he may be. This concept gives every man and woman unshakable confidence. It gives every man and woman a source of help in every situation. If you have a mobile phone in your pocket when you leave home, you will confidently believe that you are not far away from your family. You can make instant contact with your family from anywhere in the world. The same holds true for the relationship between man and God. I am a great believer in God. I can recall many instances when I found myself in a state of helplessness. Then I prayed and asked God for His help, and invariably, I realized that God Almighty was with me. He solved my problem and turned around the situation in my favor. This belief gives me conviction and determination. In my experience, everyone is in need of such a source of conviction. In our daily lives, we frequently face situations where we feel that, with our limited resources, we cannot cope with them. We need, therefore, to believe in a supernatural source of help. This belief energizes our minds. It gives us new courage to continue with the task in hand. This belief plays a great role in our lives in that it adds immeasurable hope to our struggle. It makes us able to tap our hidden energy. Life is full of disadvantages. Frequently, we face areas of existence with which we are totally unfamiliar. Dealing with them takes thought and planning, and at that time, we need some pointers to a future line of action. In such a situation, belief in God serves as a lighthouse. We are like the captain of an ocean-going vessel who finds himself in a state of loneliness and isolation. Then he spots a lighthouse on the coastline. Its light gives him new hope, and he decides to follow the path it illuminates. The result is that he is successful in reaching his destination. Indeed, life is like sailing across a great ocean. We need to believe that there is someone on the coast who can give us help when we are at our most helpless. This is the role of God in the life of every man and woman. One's success is 50% struggle and 50% hope. It is a source of great hope for everyone that God is with us. There is no distance between man and God. He is just a call away from us. I am 94 years old, and I can say that my life has been full of challenges, full of problems, and the only thing that has saved me from succumbing in any situation is my belief in God. Spiritual pursuit versus material pursuit. Disquiet is a manifestation of discontent. How does this mental state come to prevail? The reason is that all individuals are born with an unlimited desire for enjoyment, without, however, having any great capacity to fulfill this desire. It is this shortcoming in human nature that makes people live their lives in a state of mental agitation. Is it a defect in human nature which is to blame for this? Not at all. It is simply people's unawareness of themselves that creates this problem. Awareness is the key to a contented life, while unawareness is responsible for all manner of discontent and restlessness. To properly explain this phenomenon, we have to come to grips with the scheme of things devised by the Creator. According to the creation plan, the scope for material fulfillment in this world is very limited, while the scope for spiritual fulfillment or intellectual development is so vast that only the word unbounded can describe its scope. If your aim is to achieve a state of fulfillment in the material world, you will very soon discover that here the scope for this is very limited. Food, clothes, fame, married life, entertainment All these things are all too often eventually marred by boredom. This sense of a lack of fulfillment pertains to your physical being, whereas your spiritual being is untrammeled by all such constraints. Man has a dual personality, physical and spiritual. In physical terms, a person's body most often has its limitations in terms of height, girth, health, muscularity, athleticism, and so on. Due to these limitations, a person frequently becomes dissatisfied as far as his physical prowess is concerned. On the contrary, his spiritual or intellectual being has no limits to it. The realm in which the mind travels is vast and eternal, like the space stretching throughout the cosmos. The mind travels by thinking, and there are no boundaries to the thinking process. Traversing all kinds of frontiers, it continues unhindered on its journey. Scientific pursuit is an example of traveling in the intellectual domain. This is why scientists seldom suffer from the businessman's ennui. For example, Newton said about himself toward the end of his life, "I was like a boy playing on the seashore and diverting myself now and then finding a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than ordinary, whilst the great ocean of truth lay all discovered before me." Such was the feeling of the great scientific thinker Albert Einstein when he said, "The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know." Greater even than scientific pursuit is the spiritual quest. The reason for this is very clear. According to Galileo Galilei, the domain of scientific pursuit is the study of the quantitative aspect of nature, while spiritual pursuit is concerned with its qualitative side. And it is a fact that the qualitative aspect of nature is immeasurably more vast than its quantitative dimension. One who adopts the spiritual pursuit as a matter of intellectual activity is a spiritual scientist. A physical scientist may stop in his research at a certain point, but for the spiritual scientist, even the saying, "the sky's the limit," becomes inadequate. It is only spiritual achievement that can give you a sense of fulfillment. Material fulfillment is seldom achievable, but spiritual fulfillment is achievable to the ultimate extent. The importance of the seeking spirit. Discovery starts with seeking. If you are a seeker, you are bound to reach your goal. This is a law of nature, and as such, is immutable. It is impossible for anyone who is imbued with a questing spirit not to achieve his goal. Indeed, this is a divine law, which was expressed thus by Jesus Christ. "Ask and you will receive. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you." Matthew 7:7. Conversely, it is impossible for anyone to make a discovery without being possessed of a questing spirit. What is seeking? Seeking means activating your mind, your eyes, your ears. When a person activates these faculties, he develops in himself the quality of perceptiveness, so conditioning himself that whenever he finds what he wants, he immediately takes possession of it. If a blind man is thirsty, and a glass of water is placed in front of him, he will not drink from it. He is incapable of perceiving it. The same is true of unseen realities. One who does not possess the seeking spirit is spiritually blind. He is unable to see spiritual things, even if they exist all around him. Therefore, before spiritual finding comes spiritual seeking. First of all, you have to make yourself a spiritual seeker. Only then will you be able to discover those spiritual things which are always in evidence around you. The seeking spirit must be underpinned by sincerity. What is sincerity? Sincerity is freedom from deceit, falsity, and hypocrisy. It is a precondition for the success of the seeking spirit. If you have the desire to emerge as a spiritual finder, you must develop this quality of sincerity. Anyone who wants to make himself into a spiritual person must first of all turn himself into a sincere person, for sincerity is the price to be paid for spirituality. In this world, nothing can be attained without paying its price. A human being is like the onion, which has several layers to it. Just as the core of the onion can be reached only by removing these layers, so can man's personality be reached only by removing the multiple layers that bit by bit enshroud him when he lives in society. If you are in earnest about wanting to achieve spirituality, you have no option but to rediscover your core personality by divesting yourself of these layers. Once you have done so, you will find sincerity. And where there is sincerity, there is spirituality. Sincerity and spirituality go hand in hand. Sincerity is like the seed and spirituality its fruit. Spirituality is the feature in all human beings that is most to be desired. It makes life meaningful in that it spurs you on to lead a purposeful life. It enables you to live with normalcy of mind, even in abnormal circumstances. It saves you from wasting your time and energy on frivolous pursuits, thus ensuring that you become a healthy member of society. Spirituality is so precious that one must be prepared to pay any price for it, no matter how high. It is a goal worthy of attainment, but this can be achieved only by making sincere efforts. No one can achieve spirituality automatically. Every person is born twice. The first birth is the physical one, in which his parents are instrumental. The second is his spiritual birth, which a person attains by his own efforts. Learning from Nature. Walter de la Mare, 1873 to 1956. The English poet once observed a lady at a dining table taking her meal. There were some eatables on the table like porridge, muffins, apples, and so on. He then had a very strange thought. Outside the lady, these are food items. But once the lady takes in these items, they are readily converted into a living woman. That is, Miss T. De la Mare later composed a poem on this idea. He added these lines to the poem. It's a very odd thing, as odd as can be, that whatever Miss T eats turns into Miss T. This is the miracle of Miss T's stomach. But one's mind can conceive of something that is 1,000,000 times stranger than this. All these food items were produced in an external world. But miraculously, these food items are totally in accordance with our needs. Both are complementary to each other. This complementarity between two quite different things is clear evidence that there is one creator of both. It is a highly well-planned creation. This phenomenon of nature leads us to believe that there is a single force that controls the whole of nature. This in turn leads us to believe that in nature there is unity of purpose. This leads us further to believe in what may be called the oneness of God and the oneness of man. This phenomenon of nature gives us the right ideology of life, an ideology which is the basis of universal peace and brotherhood. This dispels the notion of we and they. It promotes oneness of thought. It saves us from all kinds of distraction. This ideology inculcates the notion that nature is not hostile, but friendly towards us. And when we discover that nature is of a friendly character, we also have no option but to adopt this friendly culture in our society. Then the other aspect of Miss T's experience is that we try to turn all the things around us to our own advantage. We try to absorb all the things intellectually that have already been physically absorbed by our stomach. Everyone talks of spirituality. But what is spirituality? Spirituality is not anything mysterious. Spirituality can be arrived at through contemplation rather than through meditation. Spirituality is an intellectual phenomenon. In my experience, the basis of spirituality is the mind rather than the heart. Our digestive system is a mechanism that can extract physical energy from material food. Similarly, our mind can extract spiritual energy from the same material items. Externally, these items are foodstuffs, but internally, These items are spiritual. For example, if you think that God is constantly supplying all those natural bounties to man without asking for its price, this is a silent message to man that we too have to live as giver persons in our society, without expecting that the receivers should give us anything in return. This kind of experience promotes the culture of selflessness, the culture of unilateral ethics, the spirit of living as a problem-free member of the society. We need a model code of ethics, and nature serves as that model. Nature is a divine factory. It produces those items that are highly suitable for us. Strangely enough, this industry works without consulting us. The character of nature is a predictable one, so it is required of us that we live in our society as predictable members of it. Nature works in a predictable manner, thus it gives us this lesson. Live as a predictable member of your society. The highest quality of a human being can be summed up in these two words: predictable character. Love is the best formula. There are 3 religions in the Semitic family: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. In historical order, Judaism comes first, Christianity second, and Islam third. One teaching is common to all the 3 religions, that is, love. During a visit to the U.S., I was invited by an American church to deliver a lecture on Islam and peace. After my lecture, a Christian scholar asked, "In Christianity, there is a moral injunction: love your enemy. Can you cite any such teaching from the Islamic scripture?" I replied in the affirmative. I said that in one of its chapters, the Quran says, "Good and evil deeds are not equal. Repel evil with what is better. Then you will see that one who was once your enemy has become your dearest friend." 41:34. This Quranic teaching dispels the we and they concept. By nature, everyone is your friend. The only difference is that some are your actual friends, while others are your potential friends. So try to turn this potential into actuality. This is the best formula for universal brotherhood and is common to all 3 religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Love is the greatest human virtue. Where there is love, everything is in harmony, and when there is hate, all that is good remains in jeopardy. What is the rationale behind the love all formula? It is that every other person is your benefactor. It is your lack of awareness of this fact that makes you unable to adopt this love all culture. We are living in a civilization. Whatever we make use of is a gift of this civilization. What is civilization? It is an advanced stage of refinement in ethical and material matters resulting from continuous effort on the part of all mankind. For example, when man started his life on the planet Earth, human existence was in a primitive state. It then took thousands of years of the joint efforts of humanity to bring civilization into existence. For example, in the beginning, man used to walk on his own 2 legs. Then he started traveling on horseback. After long experience, the wheel was developed, thanks to which travel by car was made possible. The uses of steam power were later discovered and travel by steamship and rail began. Man then produced airplanes which made air travel possible and further facilitated the means of contact and communication. All this was not the work of any single human being. All of humanity was involved in this process. The discovery of this reality about history gives rise to the culture of love all, while unawareness of this leads to the hate all culture. The truth is that in this world, the most realistic formula is that of love all, and the most unrealistic formula is hate all. This is why all 3 Semitic religions teach us that we should love all others, even if they appear to be our enemies. The tree's eloquent silence. In front of my house in New Delhi, there is a full-grown tree, in whose shade I am in the habit of sitting. I call it my spiritual tree. In fact, this tree is my teacher, although a silent one. The previous winter, this tree, like many others, shed its green leaves. Gradually, it became simply like dry wood. I was doubtful whether it would ever again turn green. But in the spring, the whole scenario changed. My spiritual tree again became a tree with lush green foliage. This rebirth of this tree was a great lesson. My spiritual tree turned into a speaking tree. It gave me a very significant message. Oh man, don't be hopeless in any situation. After every dry season, there is a good harvest. After every spell of hopelessness, there is new hope. After every failure, there is great success. After every dark night, there is a bright morning. No protest, no complaint, no demand, no street activism or stage activism. Simply trust your own natural abilities and work silently. My spiritual tree never left its allotted space. It never protested against anyone. It never demanded that others find it new living leaves. It remained at the same place and started a new process within itself. What was this process? This process was to get its food from beneath as well as from the sunlight. This strategy worked. The whole of nature came to its help, and after some months, it gained its lost greenery again. This is the lesson I learned from my spiritual tree. No protest, no complaint, no demand, no street activism or stage activism. Simply trust your own natural abilities and work silently. Try to reshape your destiny, and very soon you will be glad to discover that you have regained your life. What is a tree? A tree is an illustration from nature. Nature tells us of its scheme through trees, that after every winter a new spring will follow. What is needed is only to discover yourself, to discover your potential. Discover the opportunities around you and then avail of all these opportunities by silent planning. My spiritual tree creates no noise, no problems, no unwanted situations. These are the secrets of a green tree. This is also the secret of human life. Adopt the tree culture, and you will be a good member of your society, just like a tree which is a good member of its garden. Moreover, my spiritual tree has never asked me for anything. It has never sent any bills to my office, yet it gives me pleasant scenery, shade, green branches, fresh oxygen, flowers, etc. It also provides a perch for chirping birds, who with their beautiful songs give me a lot of pleasure. This is the culture of my spiritual tree. It silently gives me a message. Oh man, adopt my culture, and you will become a fitting ornament of the garden of the universe. My spiritual tree gives me the best definition of spirituality. Live as a complex-free soul, and you will find a complex-free world to live in. Your destiny is in your hands. Never allow others to decide your destiny. Utilize your opportunities. Turn your potential into actuality, and very soon you will find that you have no complaints to register against others. To my way of thinking, every tree is an embodiment of spirituality. It is a silent lexicon of spirituality. So adopt the tree as your teacher. The tree is a good teacher who is available at all times to every student. The only condition for learning from the tree is having the ability to listen to nonverbal language.